Greetings, Doom fans, and welcome to another edition of the Frostbite Falls Daily Rant, here on the Doomstead Diner. I'm starting scripting this rant on Friday night, a few hours after the Paris bombings and shoot-ups. Many things are still unclear at this point, but I will keep track of it over the next week as the blowback evolves. What I know at this point is that there are at least 120 dead people, mostly metalheads at a concert, but some art lovers at the Louvre also. ISIS quickly took credit for these actions, and Frog President Hollandaise Sauce quickly denounced the action and vowed that the frogs would hop together in defense of their homeland. Obama-sama also promised to aid the frogs in this defense, which probably means more bombs dropped on Syria, which of course has precisely the opposite effect by radicalizing still more of the Muslim population, leading to still more terrorist attacks. Now, this apparently was pretty well organized, with 6 or 7 locations hit by around 14 gunmen, all at around the same time. The frog security apparatus, which you would think is in high gear these days after the Charlie Hebdo massacre, managed to miss this bunch of folks, who also apparently had no problem getting hold of automatic weapons, even though France has pretty strict gun control laws. So, the weapons, besides the shooters, also were likely smuggled in on some beach in the south of France on a moonless night some months ago. At least, if it was not a false flag engineered by the frog security apparatus itself to provide an excuse for shutting down the borders and immigration. ISIS, besides taking credit for the attacks, also claims that they have smuggled in around 4,000 of their fighters to take the fight to the enemy on home territory. This has not yet been established as true. For real credibility on this, they should be able to follow up with still more attacks in other cities and countries around Europe. Similar to 9/11, if it is just a one-off incident and isn't followed up with further mayhem, it's not really that big a threat on the grand scale. Although for the individual who happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, it's definitely a threat. This kind of shit only becomes a real existential threat once it starts to shut down business as usual in a country under this kind of attack. Right now, tonight, frogs are instructed to stay on their lily pads and not travel around. Martial law is in force. Schools are closed, but of course tomorrow is Saturday and schools would be closed anyhow. What about Monday? Just gotta wait and see on that one. Are there any of the terrorists who pulled the stunts still at large? This we don't know yet. In terms of asymmetric warfare, if in fact it's true that ISIS is responsible and has smuggled in 4,000 Allah Akbarus to wreak mayhem around Europe, then they should be following up with more attacks in other cities. Otherwise, it smells more like a 9/11 style false flag, providing a good excuse for Euro countries to close their borders and refuse more incoming refugees. News now also is that France has deployed their only nuke-powered aircraft carrier, the Charles de Gaulle, to the waters off the Syrian coast. The purpose of which is to do precisely what? The Ruskies are bombing in Syria, and so is NATO already. One frog aircraft carrier here will make a big difference? What? More problems drop means more refugees and more radicalized terrorists. Besides, their real problems aren't in Syria anyhow. They're right at home in Frogland and Krautland and Limeyland too. In all of these places, for the last couple of decades, they have been importing in Muslims from MENA to do the scut work in the society while their own birth rates declined. This was when they actually had scut work for them to do and could afford to pay them to do the scut work. Now, besides the huge influx of new refugees, their social welfare system is failing. Many scut workers are now unemployed, so there is already a huge population of unhappy people floating around these countries, not just in France either. Okay, it is now Saturday in the aftermath of the Paris massacre. Information surfacing today is that supposedly one of the now dead terrorists was found with a Syrian passport on the ground next to him in perfect condition. How very convenient. Terrorists always carry their passports with them when on suicide missions. Very helpful for the Gestapo to identify them. Apparently, this fellow arrived in Greece a while back and got his passport stamped there by the customs people. Another nagging question here is precisely how did these guys get hold of their Kalashnikovs and C4 explosives if they came via the regular refugee highway through Greece? It's not like you can just walk across all these borders armed to the teeth. Numerous other borders to cross on the way to Frogland also, so there is no way they were carrying the weapons on the migration route. That means they had to acquire them in France, and Kalashnikovs and C4 are not on sale at low prices every day from Walmart. So how did the weapons get into France? And where were they being stored until the stealth terrorists/refugees came to pick them up? Suggestions have been made on the diner, from shipping containers to yachts with secreted caches of weapons aboard. For the shipping containers, this requires fake shipping papers, making it through customs, and having some kind of warehouse where their weapons are stored until the jihadists come to pick them up. You need a pretty extensive network operating inside France that Frog Gestapo doesn't know about for this method. For the yacht method, if you are doing it that way, why send your assault team via the regular refugee highway? Send them in aboard the yacht, and they hit the beaches in the French Riviera to be picked up by another jihadist already there with a 16-passenger van, then drive to Paris to a safe house until the operation. No borders to cross, no passports necessary either. In either case, however, it demands a pretty solid network of people operating inside France that Frog Gestapo hasn't infiltrated and knows nothing about. While it is conceivable that they are that incompetent, it strains my credibility meter. Which leaves the possibility of a false flag and a setup. But cui bono on this? Who benefits, and is such a drastic action really necessary here? On the terrorist side, further sowing fear and demonstrating they can hit the civilian population of the West on a fairly large scale is an important goal. Also, getting the West to waste still more trillions of dollars dropping bombs that are generally ineffective without backup of boots on the ground is a means to accelerate the bankruptcy of these states. On the Western side, this action provides an excuse for shutting down the borders to stop the influx of refugees currently overwhelming them and to further ramp up the surveillance and the police state. It also benefits right-wing warmongers and the arms manufacturers. So it really could go either way, and dismissing the false flag possibility out of hand is not being realistic based on history. Okay, another day has gone by. Some soccer matches were canceled, and the big worry is that all this action will disrupt the Eurotrash Soccer Championships. One thing I love about the articles is that they always drop in the term friendly as an adjective, as in a friendly soccer match between the Frogs and Krauts was canceled due to a bomb threat. Everybody knows soccer matches aren't friendly. They don't need terrorists or violence to break out in a soccer match. Besides that, the gendarme in Paris is currently engaged in a shootout north of central Paris, and there is an international manhunt going on for the one who got away, supposedly the mastermind of the operation. There's another great MSM use of language. Masterminds are always evil criminal geniuses in the comic books. It's Superman versus Lex Luthor, and we are Superman and the terrorists are Lex. This simplifies the problem in the mind of Joe Sixpack. We gotta fly in there and get this evil genius motherfucker. Now I ask you, how big a genius do you need to be to go do a shoot-'em-up with Kalashnikovs? Then, your leader drops in with promises of swift and sure retribution, basically by bombing some town back to the Stone Age. Hollandaise sauce did not disappoint here, and the Frogs are now bombing the living shit out of the purported home base of ISIS, together with, of all people, the Ruskies, who are sending over their long-range bombers and cruise missiles. But of course, nobody is sending in boots on the ground, and all it does is create more failed states with more terrorists. The whole neighborhood has become completely ungovernable, basically because their oil revenue dried up and their water supply too. However, the West still wants those pipelines working, shipping out the oil back to whatever happy motorists are still left here in the fascist states of America. What really nobody will admit is that none of these countries can afford a full-scale, boots-on-the-ground type operation, not the French, not the Ruskies, and not the FSFA either. So you just end up with an ever-widening circle of mayhem, which is now making its way to Europe, and Russia too, no doubt, through the Caucasus and through Chechnya. This is entropy at work. And that's all the doom. This time until next time, here on the Doomstead Diner.